moves us out of that participatory shared governance process. But underscoring that is this notion of transparency and accountability. So we have this debate because the university says, well, we're going to put people that we want who are alumni on the board. And it's an interesting question because in the process of doing that, when the alumni interest was front and center, we have no record, no way to know, not a single piece of paper of minutes to know that this question was debated and the nature and extent of that debate by the very alumni who sat on that board when the board of trustees voted unanimously to exclude its alumni, faculty, and students. But it doesn't stop there because our concerns grow much deeper. For the last 5 years and since 2015, there's been a trend in the movement in the university, and there's a growing insensitivity, and it's callous in some respects. And I know that personally because the board is here and the students are here. The board is here and the faculty is here. The board is here and the alumni are here. And so what we are seeing is this sensitivity, and in writing, our university, in a writing, stated that the faculty, students, and alumni have no rights under the bylaws, which gives them any right in the governance process. So we have organized HAU to really promote some sensitivity to the value and meaning of alumni. Alumni raised 1/3 of the amount of money that the university raised in 2021, according to numbers that we've seen, and all of you have seen those numbers. Alumni were taught and trained at Howard to think and to question. So we, in addition to being concerned about the transparency at the university and the accountability, are also concerned about alumni independence. And to HAU's credit, it's so many volunteers, it's incredible, have begun to think through and to reason and to develop not just the idea of alumni independence, but ultimately, at some point, the development of an independent alumni association. An independent alumni association has been one of the goals because our present situation, and it's not casting aspersions on the wonderful people who serve and volunteer throughout the country in alumni positions, but the alumni interests are censored essentially by the fact that we don't have, our alumni association is part of the university. And again, the freeness of debate, the respect for debate of differences has not happened at the level that protects and ensures alumni interest. And there are other concerns that you'll hear about later in that regard. A third area that we have become interested in, we think that alumni need to know this, and I will say it this way. We're all very proud of Howard. We love the fact that the vice president is a Howard grad. We're all excited by what we see in the theater arts and the entertainment sectors on Howard. We have many doctors and lawyers and engineers and architects and MBAs and PhDs and the like. But we believe fundamentally from information that we're learning that because Howard exists as it does today doesn't mean that in 2032 or 2042, it's going to be the Howard that we know. And we don't say that lightly. We have a research committee that has gone into the weeds and looked under the rock, that's under the rock and under the rock. And by analogy, from a technological point of view, when your identity or your legacy is compromised, things happen that you don't control. And in this particular situation, we urge alumni to pay attention because there are developments on the financial side that are serious and that impede the flexibility of the value structure and the value framework that we're all very proud of as Howard alumni. It's a difficult issue, but you'll hear more about that tonight. So I just want you to know that HAU has, for 1 year, without a major budget, primarily with the time, energy, resources, and intellect of your fellow alum, consistently organized, consistently questioned, consistently studied, debated, welcomed debate, reached out to the board, reached out to the administrations, worked with students, talked to faculty, and we're doing what we think Howard University should be doing for the betterment of our future as an institution. We believe unapologetically, unqualifiedly that Howard is a Black university. And the fact that it needs and requires resources to maintain it doesn't mean that it necessarily has to redirect its mission and attention in a way that compromises the integrity of its founding in 1867, coming out of a period of time when it used to be against the law for Black people to read and write, and coming through a time, even in 2022, when we remain different, not so much by choice. We remain different to a country that still questions us and challenges us, our identity, our politics, our economics, our business, our education. And so we can't rest on that. We can't go to sleep on that in terms of where we are. And so HAU is digging in. We invite your criticism. We invite your support. We invite you to join our committees. We invite you to get involved because, as I said, this is a serious time. Even in the next 60 to 90 days, the things that we have accomplished, the things that we stand for, the aspirations that we have, not only for ourselves, but our children and our grandchildren and their children and their grandchildren are at stake. So with that and against that framework, we welcome you. We hope that tonight's meeting is the beginning for some, but for those who have participated, we're going to have another meeting in September. We're going to share a great deal of information with you. I want to thank my classmate, Renee, for joining us. That's my Howard and Georgetown classmate, Georgetown law classmate. So we're in for a treat, and thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Donald, and very well said. Appreciate those remarks. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Helen Higginbotham, and she is going to introduce our guest speaker. Like Donald said, I think we're in for a treat. Helen?
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing Renee Higginbotham-Brooks. I was laughing with her earlier today. I said it'll be one of the few times that you're introduced by someone who knows how to pronounce your name. So I am Helen Higginbotham, MBA class of 1992. And I ask you to please join me in welcoming tonight as our guest speaker, Renee Higginbotham-Brooks, class of 1974, not 1975, Donald. Yeah. And Renee graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and in 1977, she graduated from Georgetown Law and was admitted to the bar in her home state of Texas. Renee is an award-winning private practice attorney in Fort Worth, Texas, with more than 30 years of experience specializing in personal injury, public finance, and public policy, with extensive transactional experience as a co-bond counsel and underwriters counsel. She has participated in over 180 municipal bond issues, totaling over $20 billion for clients, including the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport and the Texas Public Finance Authority. Renee has been recognized as a top attorney in North America in 2015-16 edition of the Who's Who directory. She is affectionately known as Texas' leading lady lawyer and distinguished as being the first and only African-American and female to serve on the Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission, and has the distinct honor of having served as a board member with the esteemed MD Anderson Cancer Center. Tonight, we have the privilege of having Renee share with us her experience and her perspective of shared governance as a former member of the Howard Board of Trustees, where she was elected to serve 18 years of service from 1997 to 2015. 6 years she served as an alumni trustee, which is very relevant to our conversation tonight. 12 years she served as a general trustee. 9 years she served as the vice chair. Renee is giving of her time tonight to join us from Martha's Vineyard. So thank you so much, Renee, for interrupting your vacation and spending some time with us. And we look forward to hearing everything that you have to say. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good, good. Well, thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity to provide my perspective with respect to shared governance. And like Helen said, I served on the board as an elected trustee, alumni trustee for 6 years, and then a general trustee for 12 years, and 9 years of that as the vice chair of the board of trustees. And my perspective is limited to Howard University and the culture at Howard University that I observed while I was there. I'll start by saying that I believe that Howard University is the greatest Black institution in the world. If you got something to say that was different from that, fine, but that's my perspective. And as a member of that board, I did observe quite a bit as both the alumni trustee and the general trustee. And I will start with the faculty and the value of having the faculty on the board of trustees at Howard University. It's my opinion, my perspective, that, and what I observed over the 18 years, that there was not value added by having the faculty of the university on the board of trustees, having 2 people on the board of trustees. And that's because what I observed was, in most instances, with a few exceptions, they were note takers. And they were taking notes of everything that was discussed and reporting it back to the faculty senate. They did not add, in my opinion, any value to the university, plus their employees. So that kind of puts them in a precarious situation in my mind. Now, as far as students are concerned, we always listen to students. Their opinion is incredibly valuable, and they should have input at every level, I believe, in the board of trustees policy-making decisions. And but I don't think that it's necessary that they have a vote on the board of trustees. That's just my opinion. But I do believe that they should be involved in all discussions relative to the academics of the university, student life of the university, the financial need for certain programs, tuition, fees, all of that. And we were always very interested in their perspective, and it carried a tremendous amount of weight in our discussions and regarding decisions over many aspects of the university. But I don't really believe that a vote, them being elected and having a vote on the board of trustees is necessary. That it particularly adds value at Howard University. Now, the alums, I take a different position. I believe there should be alumni representation on the board of trustees. And that is because of 2 things. The first one being that I believe that the alumni trustee provides an added, having a person on the board of trustees as an alumni trustee provides the board with an opportunity to bring in talent that they would normally not select to the Board of Trustees. And my experience at Howard, most of the members of the Board of Trustees may have been alums, about half at some points, but they were of corporate America. And I mean, we need diversity on the Board of Trustees. And I think that's one way that you get it is through having elected members of the Board of Trustees as alumni members. But for having alumni trustees, you would not have Debbie Allen on the board. She was an alumni trustee. Felicia Rashad was an alumni trustee. Andy Young was an alumni trustee. Hewitt Brown was an alumni trustee. I believe it's important to have alumni on the board. The other reason is an obvious reason, and that is to fundraise. And I'm going to get to my next point about the board. I believe that everybody who serves on the Board of Trustees at Howard University should be about the 3 G's. Giving money to the university, getting money for the university, or getting off the board. I believe that should be the function of the Board of Trustees. And that is what I believe Howard University needs more than anything, are people that are willing to donate money to the university in very key areas where that is necessary. But like I said, this is my perspective based on my experience at Howard University for 18 years on the Board of Trustees. And it's very rare, or at least it was, to have alumni trustees become general trustees and be selected at some point. The reason that I was transferred and selected was because I was all about raising money. And I demonstrated that from day one. I believe that that is what Howard needs. And I believe that when you give money, you get a voice, or you get money and you get a voice. And I think that strengthens the culture of the university. And the role of the trustees as well, giving money. And that has not been the case, and was not the case when I was there. The members of the Board of Trustees gave in some instances they did not. And it was not expected. And I think that definitely should change. And so those are kind of my general perspective of the Board of Trustees and shared governance. And I'm, like I said, I'm on vacation, but I will take some questions if there are any. I will take a few questions.
Renee, can you discuss for us what was your perception on the tactics that were used in removal of the 3 persons from?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That you're absolutely right, Helen. That's the problem. That's the big problem, is the process that was used. Based on what I know about the process that was used, I think it was incredibly flawed in what they did. And I believe that what they should have done was to have far more input from the constituents, from faculty, from students, from alums. When we select a president of the university, we go around the country. We go to as many alumni clubs as we possibly can. We get their input into who they would like, what kind of background, experience they would like to see in the president, a new president, what kind of programs they'd like for a new president to address, all of this. But in this particular case, I think that they should have taken far more time in talking to constituents, stakeholders that were affected by this. Once you have this power and you take it away, I think you've got to bend over backwards to really get everybody to buy into a new concept. And I think that that's the problem here. The process was severely flawed.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, that's all.
Thank you for that explanation. Randall, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you so very kindly. Thank you, Renee Higginbotham-Brooks. It's been and just thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for your face being at the National Bar Association. But a few years ago, I have to ask a controversial question. A few years ago, you wrote a letter. Can you tell us whether or not that letter that you wrote at that time was relevant, and how can the board be improved at this time as far as alumni involvement with or without us? Well, I'm not going to qualify it. How can alumni better serve the university?
Well, at the time I wrote that letter, I thought it was absolutely relevant, and I think it's still relevant in a lot of respects today. The bottom line is,
Excuse me, some people don't know what that letter was. Can you just summarize what that was? Because I would venture to say many people don't know what that was.
okay, that I wrote a letter in 2013 to other board members. And my objective was to reach and address serious issues with only other board members that I believe that we were not addressing. And I laid out the reasons why we needed to make changes in the administration because they were not, in my opinion, and in many members of the Board of Trustees' opinions as well. I mean, they agreed with me. Most of them did. That we were not really, the administration was not addressing the serious issues that Howard had at that time. And I mentioned that students, of course, were being by their high school councils, they were being sent to junior colleges and to PWIs rather than HBCUs, and that, you know, they were telling the Black students that, you know, they didn't need to go to HBCUs, that was irrelevant. And I said Howard wouldn't be here in 3 years if we didn't make some serious changes. And it quite honestly had a lot to do with what I was aware of in terms of the finances of the university at that time. And I was trying to get the board to seriously address what they knew were the problems. We had too many employees and we were not raising money. And, you know, if you can't really normally go to corporations or foundations or organizations and ask them to provide you with funds to expand programs or to build buildings, unless you can justify to them that their input is necessary because you have the buy-in of alums. And Randall, it's very, very important that we as alums of Howard make our voice heard through our pocketbooks. And I would not say a lot of money. I mean, it's not like you got, oh, well, I don't have Bill Gates money, all this kind of stuff. Give and give often to what you would like to see happen at Howard, the programs that you believe in. And in this case, this organization should be about that as well, giving money. You get a voice when you give money. Money talks. And that's what the university needs, in my opinion, more than anything else, is a huge following of alums that are willing to give and give often. And that's another thing that's important, often giving, not the amount.
Thank you for that. We are running slightly behind, so I think we had one more hand up, and that was Brandon. And Brandon, I think you also asked your question in the chat, so why don't you go on?
Yes, Madam Trustee, in a letter, which you and I have some familiarity around letters. I wrote a letter in defense of your sentiment in 2013 with regard to the culture of the university and some concerns you expressed about transparency of the board at that time. But there was one point of dissension that was made in a very friendly manner between your letter and my letter, which was published in the Hilltop, yours, I believe, in the Washington Post, which was our perspective or our viewpoint of the effectiveness of the leadership of the university at that time. And that dissent remains for me. I was a student, a newly minted Bison at that point in time, and had overwhelming confidence in the leadership of the president, and did not share that confidence in the transition from that president with what we have today. And frankly, would like to know if you see the temperature of leadership at the administrative level as being a part of this particular representative crises that we have with the board at the moment. And what I mean is the exclusion of constituent trustees as a product of the nature of leadership that we have at an administrative level. And in responding to that, talk about how we might improve that, if you agree, how we might improve that with the selection of the first woman, 18th foundational Black American president.
Well, first of all, it's my opinion that we have excellent leadership in the president that we currently have compared to the past, what we had before. I definitely believe that. And what was the other part of that you wanted me to address? And now, as far as, oh yes, as far as the stakeholders being on the board, that's a decision of the Board of Trustees. That is their decision. The president is a member of the board, just like any other member of the board. He does not make those decisions. That is not the purview of the president. As a policy decision to change the bylaws. And that can only be done by the Board of Trustees. And I personally believe that that is what happened here. The Board of Trustees made this decision. And that process they used was not inclusive. And it did not reach out and try to get buy-in to make the change that they desired to make. But that's the truth. I mean, that's just the way it's always been done.
And the 18th, Madam Trustee?
I beg your pardon?
And the 18th president, and just our consideration of what woman and why that woman for the role.
I can't tell you what woman, but I certainly hope that that will be the course that we take going forward. And that process is also extremely inclusive. I don't have a name in mind, certainly, but there are a lot of extremely well-qualified women, African-American women, willing and able and interested in serving in the capacity as the president of Howard University. And I certainly hope that the search firm that they use will really seek them out. And I'm not sure that has always been the case in the past.
All right, we are really running short of time, and I know everybody's hitting me up with questions, and I really want to honor all the questions. So Alta, I see you sent me a message. I would ask, please, that your question is brief and it requires a brief answer, because we are pressed for time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time on the call. So Alta.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cheryl. Hello, classmate Renee. Very quick question. I wanted to ask you specifically if all money is considered good money.
No, I don't believe all money is considered good money. I can tell you about a couple of political campaigns where that certainly is not the case. But yes, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. All money is good money. No. Mm-mm. Depends
There was
on
a
the
reason
stress
for that.
attached to it, you know.
Thank you.
And Renee, thank you so much for being here, especially for Martha's Vineyard. I'm actually surprised you have such a great connection. A couple of us were there a couple of weeks ago and we didn't have any service. So that's a blessing that you were able to present undisturbed and with service. I would ask, I don't know what your plans are, but when I tell you, I'm getting messages on my phone, I'm getting direct chat messages. So people have other questions for you. We're going to try to save some time at the end of the presentation for additional questions. So if you can stay on for as long as you can, we would appreciate it. I saw that kind of look like, I don't know, but if it's a possibility, we would appreciate it. There are a lot of good questions that came through, but that would probably take another 30 minutes. So thank you again for your perspectives. Thank you for taking questions, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and I certainly enjoyed having this opportunity to give my perspective, and I will do my best to stay on the call as well.
All right, thank you so much for that. All right, well, next up is Sharon Bryant. As stakeholders, one of the things that we rarely talk about get into is Howard's debt. And I think that we should all be attuned to that and understand what that means, especially in terms of what that means for our university and what we're all about. So Sharon, I am going to turn it over to you and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, Cheryl. Before I get started, before we start the video, I have a short disclaimer I need to read, so just bear with me. It'll be brief. Before we get started tonight, I need to provide you with a short disclaimer. I, Sharon Bryant, am speaking to you tonight as a proud alumnus of the university, not in any professional capacity. My remarks and comments tonight are a reflection of my own views and do not necessarily represent the views of my employer, my colleagues there, or the leaders of that organization. None of what we discuss tonight is intended as investment advice, so please do not take it as such. The presentations tonight and ensuing discussions are meant to inform alumni and any other stakeholders present, giving them context for what they often see in press releases and news articles. All of the information here is from publicly available sources. Now that we have that out of the way, if you're wondering why we are discussing this information, well, it's because of the dearth of African-American professionals working within certain parts of the financial community. Oftentimes, there is news and objective information available and discussed in the public sphere that many of the university's own stakeholders are totally unaware of. We want to begin to close that gap for our fellow Bison. The university stakeholders should be as informed about Howard University as members of the larger community. We've tried to provide citations to where you can find the supporting information and do a deeper dive if you so desire. We encourage you to do so. Our goal is to be as transparent as possible so that you can become more informed and reach your own conclusions. Also, while I may be doing much of the speaking on behalf of the research committee tonight, I would like to thank the members of the committee that regularly devote much of their time to shaping these presentations into something that will be informative and helpful for you. So thank you, Dr. Stanton Biddle, Lucretia Denson, Fatia Torre, Janine Rowson, and Karine Collette. They work awfully hard. Please know that without their efforts, this presentation and those that will follow would not be possible. Okay, we're ready for the video now. Okay, wait a minute, I'm not seeing the video, I'm just seeing the screen. Is it just me?
We do not see it.
Not seeing it either.
Yeah, it's just a screen.
Yeah, just looking at her desktop.
We could hear the audio though.
Okay, stand by, please.
Okay, thanks.
Can you see it now? Yes.
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 Okay, I'll start it over.
Garbage.
I wanted to welcome everyone to this evening's discussion.
Okay. So the research committee just wanted to give you the basics on Howard's debt. We're not going into detail, but we will at a town hall on September 29th to start to sort of unfold and unravel what's involved in that debt, what the debt picture kind of looks like historically for Howard up through today. So this is kind of the precursor for that, the further conversations, because you can't have those unless you know the basics. And we don't want to just talk at you. We want ultimately alum to be able to have a conversation around Howard's finances and otherwise. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns?
And can the rest of the committee help me? Because I'm only seeing, I don't have a small view, so I don't know if there are any hands up. I don't see anything in the chat. Does anyone have their hand raised for a question for Sharon?
I have a question, Cheryl, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. This is Donald. Renee just mentioned money, 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 and you're giving a presentation about the university's sources of money. I'm just curious as to if the university is getting money through bonds and loans and the like, what type of potential risk might that create as we prepare for the September 29th hearing, not in the September 9th meeting? What type of risk is created by taking money as it comes in these transactions?
So what I'll say is, I mean, all borrowing involves risk. It's just that simple. It's risk for the lender, but also risk for the borrower, right? You have to be comfortable that you can meet your debt service obligations that are required under your different borrowing or loan arrangements. If you can't, you risk default, and default would not be a good thing. Your creditors can force you into bankruptcy. If you've provided them with collateral and for some reason you should default, they would have a right to proceed against you to get that collateral, whether that be a mortgage or something else. So that's, something to keep in mind. I'm not in any way saying the university is on the verge of default. I don't want you to take that away. But Donald asked sort of a broad question around like borrowing and what are the risks. And that's sort of it.
It looks like we have a question from Adrian Stevens.
Yes, thank you for that presentation. That was awesome. And I was just wondering from a finance person's perspective, will that be addressed in the town hall meeting? Like, I mean, what's our grade? Are we failing? Are we, in the red, the black? I forgot which one is the bad one.
So here's the thing. That's a good question you asked. I'm going to encourage everyone. This is a good, Adrian, you did this for me. So I'm just going to put this out here, right? On YouTube, Howard Alumni United has their own channel. Please subscribe to it. That way, if you missed an email, there are videos out there. There'll be more coming. So you don't have to worry about if you miss an email. If you subscribe to it, you'll get a notification when they're out there. There's a presentation already out there that we discussed at the April meeting that gives some background on ratings and how you can kind of judge how the rating agencies view the debt and kind of compare it to FICO scores. So, we as consumers at least have some understanding about FICO scores. But if you're not in the corporate borrowing space, it may be a little over your head. So we did a presentation to give you Howard's ratings over time, to give you the different rating agencies and how the different ratings, the differences in the ratings, so that you have some background for what's coming. And here's the thing, I want to make this clear. If you don't work in finance, specifically in fixed income, most of this is going to be new to you. Do not stress about not being able to understand it in one take. Do not stress about like, this seems over my head. It takes time. I trust my fellow bison. I think you can get it. So just know you might want to watch it once. You might want to go back to slides. The presentations are going to kind of work together So over time, you'll build a knowledge and you'll be surprised. You'll look at, press releases from the university totally different. Like things you read before that you probably just skipped over several paragraphs that you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. You will now understand and say, oh, wait a minute, what is that? Or what are they saying? Oh, okay. So that's the point. That's the goal.
And thank you for that, Sharon, because definitely I can speak for myself. You've put it in language that I can understand. And I saw somebody else in the chat say the same thing. I think it was Tiffany. We have time for 2 more brief questions. I think the pronunciation of your last name, Cleveland, is Christoph, and then April Silver.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
As Sharon and group, the comments I'm about to make are not about me, but about 60 years of perspective after I graduated from Howard. All of that time I've spent in the financial markets as a banker, an international banker, as a venture capitalist, and served on many boards, public and private. I'm really puzzled about what the objective is with respect to this discussion about Howard's debt. I honestly don't get it. The simple reality is organizations, whether they are for-profit or not for-profit, make decisions about how they finance what they're trying to achieve. Howard's no different. And if the objective of this conversation is to suggest that Howard has too much debt, okay, tell me what the alternative is. Companies make decisions, universities make decisions about what their aspirations are and what their means are with respect to financing it. One of the things that I really appreciated about the prior conversation in terms of the perspective of the former trustee was her 3 Gs. Ultimately, institutions, private or public, have to fund themselves. And the concept of having trustees and having others, alums, give more money to Howard is absolutely spot on. But if that's not happening, and if the university is going to continue to move forward, it's got to fund itself somehow. And yes, the reality is if you go to the debt markets, there are going to be covenants. There are going to be observations with respect to the standards that have to be met. That's the same for everybody. So I'm looking forward to the next discussion because candidly, I'm still at a loss as to what the objective is about discussing the university's debt level. Because if anybody if anybody is suggesting that Howard, at least the Howard I've known over the last 60 years, and what I know of its debt structure and so forth now, if anybody is suggesting that, okay, Howard's got too much debt, so, all right, what do you do about that? What you do about that is, yeah, the alums and others raise more money, but absent that, the alternative is that the university cuts back on programs. That's just my perspective. Thank you.
So
Okay.
Sharon, again, you guys are probably going to kill me, but I'm really trying to be respectful of time. And I want to say that is a great question, Cleveland. I did not hear, and I'm seeing something in the chat. I don't think that there was any implication that there was anything that the university was doing wrong. I think information was just presented. We are all stakeholders. I want to be more involved in Howard and know what's going on other than, the times that I enjoy spending with my homecoming, but my friends, my friends that I went to school with is homecoming. So can I just finish, please? So I think the intent is just to inform. It's not to, it suggests anything. It's just informational. And as Sharon said, we are going to have a more detailed town hall that is going to be simply focused around this on September 29th.
I understand that, but having been around this horn for a long time, I would suggest to you, it's leaving the implication that you feel the board is doing something wrong and that Howard is financially mismanaged. And I think that's a disservice to the university. That's my
I'll
view.
let you take that.
I just want to say, just to have a discussion, right? To have others be, not as informed as you are, right? You've got a lifetime, a career of experience working in the financial market. So they don't have to be as informed as you are, but just like investors look at financial statements and have questions and discussions around debt, the university stakeholders, especially alumni who do give, they gave $66 million last year. I think they should be able to have a discussion around Howard's overall financial situation, not just, to be constantly told they need to write a check. They're entitled to some amount of transparency and to be able to have a more robust discussion around it. That is all.
Sharon, I don't disagree with you. However, as you yourself said in your observations, this is going to be over the head of most people. And I'm more concerned about the inference that this discussion leads to, but that's my perspective.
Hey, Cheryl, can I say this to you, please? Because I think that your view is disconnected from what we're doing in terms of the transparency issue. You could be a finance person, you could be a banker, you could do deals, you could do bonds, but it depends on the nature of the deal. I said that the Howard that we know in 2022 might not be the Howard we know in 2032. From a financial point of view, you may look at that question differently. But you can have a business, you can have a house, you can own a building, and certain things may happen in the process. And I think it's a deeper question than finances. I talked about climate. Do you think that everybody that gives money to Howard or lends money to Howard has the same interest that you do? And the point I make about that is not fair that we have a debate and it's a presumed inference. And I'll tell you why. Because the reality is this, is that if you're over leveraged and you collateralize certain buildings and classrooms, and you have a potential default risk, then you lose those buildings. In a community like the District of Columbia, where property is extremely valued, and I litigate cases involving finance against banks in foreclosure situations, and I see how these transactions work. Our people, alumni, need to know what's going on, need to understand the risk. Because they're not as sophisticated as some people, like maybe yourself or Sharon, for that matter, doesn't mean that they shouldn't know and know the risk. Because if we're not vigilant, and that's where the accountability and transparency comes in, then we need to, then we create the risk that the institution that we're talking about will be exposed to some potential harm, HARM, and that's real. And so you can't say because you look at a deal, when you negotiate a deal or transaction, what the implications of that transaction are, because transactions go south all the time. And so it's our duty as alumni, quite frankly, and it's the board's duty when we look at these transactions to examine them. Now, what we have done, and may not be as deep as the board, but on September the 29th, our research committee, which includes people not unlike yourself and Sharon, are going to talk to our alumni so that they can see what is going on in a way that they have not been told. So then we can make decisions about it. If there are inferences that come out of that debate, that's good, because we're debating information that we may have differences about. But to keep that information concealed or to disclose or to say that we know what they don't know and I know better than them is not fair. It's not fair to alumni, and it's not fair to the future of the university. Thank you.
So I think I've exceeded my time, Cheryl, so I'm going to relinquish back to you.
Well, that was a really, really, really good discussion. And I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any response back to how you answered the question or Donald answered. So I think we're good to move on. Does anyone else have anything that they want to bring up at this point before we actually move on?
I yield my time.
Oh, that's right, April. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I know you love me. I love you too.
I do. I am so sorry, but I don't want to overlook it because again, this was a very robust conversation that needed to be had. So is there anything that you wanted to add quickly before I move on?
Not that can't wait until the 29th
29th.
when everybody comes back.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, April. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy to talk about some exciting homecoming updates.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Good evening, everyone. So it is my pleasure to announce that Howard Alumni United will host its inaugural Homecoming Happy Hour on Friday, October 21st between 5 and 7 p.m. And so due to the COVID pandemic, this will actually be the first time that we will gather together in person. So while we're still working out the logistics for the exact location in Washington, D.C., what we can tell you is that seating will likely be limited to about 200 people or less. So with that said, what we would like to do tonight is to get a gauge of how many people would be interested in joining us. So very shortly, you should see a poll appear on your screen. So if you will kindly indicate your interest in attending our event by simply marking yes or no, that would be really helpful to our homecoming planning committee. And I will just give everybody a little bit of time to answer the poll. Let me know if you don't see it. Hopefully you see it.
So is homecoming still virtual though, for the most part this year?
Our event will be in person.
Huh? No, I know your event, but I'm saying, you know, the overall homecoming events are going to be like virtual, right? Like last year.
I don't think that that's the case, but does anyone
I
have
thought that's what
No,
Dr. Frederick said. I don't know. Maybe not.
Everything is in person.
Yeah, it's in person.
Oh.
My understanding that last year was in person also, even though they told us not to come, there were still a lot of in-person activities.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, this could change.
The theme is the Mechaverse. There's a YouTube video on it.
So I will give it just a few
Put it
more
in the chat.
seconds just to allow everybody to have a chance to fill out the poll. Just a few more seconds.
Manny, put the link in the chat.
For those on Facebook, I did post the YouTube video in our Facebook group as well, if you're there, but I'll try to find it and post it.
All right. So Angela, do you feel we have a good number of responses at this point?
We have 72% of our participants that have answered, 73%. Just let me know if it's kind of waned off. It's up to 74% now, 75%. %76. 77%. %78%.
I think that should be good enough.
Okay, I'll end the poll now.
All right, thanks so much, Angela. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to participate in our poll. In the coming week or so, we will be sending out an Eventbrite invitation with all of the details for our happy hour. And we hope that you'll be able to come out and enjoy with us to have some fun before all of the big parties begin. So again, please remember to mark your calendars and save the date for Friday, October 21st, starts at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you,
Where?
Tracy. Did I
Where?
hear?
Tracy, did you want us to share the results, or will we share those later? How did you?
I think we can share it later in the follow-up email. That will help.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I think we can share it now.
You want to share them now?
Did I hear it sounded like I heard a male voice. Was that someone asking a question?
Where is the affair on October 29th? 21st.
So again, as I indicated, we have not yet finalized the decision, but what the decision in terms of the venue. But what I can tell you is that it will definitely be held in Washington, D.C. in the city. And so more information will be forthcoming in the next week.
So we have 48% that responded yes, 25% no, and 27% maybe.
All righty. Thank you so much, Tracy, for that update. And everyone stay tuned. You will get the details, the logistics of where, when, all that good stuff. So thank you for answering the poll. All righty. At this time, April, I'm going to throw it back over to you anyway for you to talk about alumni independence and what you and the subcommittee have been up to.
Thank you, Cheryl. Good evening to all of the folks who are here on this call. A special shout out and expression of gratitude to the steering committee and all of the committee members at HAU. Really happy to be here. I'm going to try to talk fast. I know we have a Q&A part that we want to get to, but my role is really for emphasis and reminders. And for those who may not be familiar with what this particular committee does, I'm just going to give some big chunks. But mostly I want to definitely thank everybody for attending, and definitely want to shout out all of those activists and organizers who come before us and given us a roadmap about how to fight for what it is that we believe in. So really and truly, the Alumni Independence Committee, of which I am the chair, I'm going to read what's on our website. I'm going to ask my fellow steering committee members or AI committee members to put the URL to HAU in the chat for everybody so people can read for themselves. So I'm going to give an overview of what this particular committee is about. It's one of 3 committees. And I would ask you to go to the website, howardalumniunited.org, and look at the subcommittees. We have 8 subcommittees, and it speaks to a lot. But just as an overarching statement, so you can understand who we are and what we do, this particular committee works to help define, develop, and help forward the organization's core mission of independently representing and advocating for alumni interests. This is an alumni independence movement at Howard University, and it is also focused on supporting current students, financially supporting alumni and university fundraising campaigns, and establishing strategic, mutually beneficial relationships and partnerships across a variety of public and private sectors. So that's a formal way of saying that there are 2 things that we are squarely focused on within this committee: restoring shared governance to the Board of Trustees, which is why this gathering of people was founded in the first place a little over 12 months ago, and simultaneously envisioning, creating, developing an independent alumni organization that is nonprofit in structure and that carries no negative or contradictory, in a sense, energy or structure or beliefs or principles toward any entity that already exists. We do seek to be untethered from the university, and it's embedded in our name when we say we are about alumni independence. So we are not running in contradiction per se to any entity, alumni, local or national, but we do believe that there is value and importance and foresight and wisdom and being a group of alumni who are untethered and disconnected financially from the university. So very specifically, that means that we are envisioning what that structure looks like. We are moving strategically so that when we announce more formally what that structure is, it is solid, it is well thought out. We are bringing the full weight and width and breadth of the intelligence of those who went to or graduated from Howard University. So I would ask if there's any interest in learning more, then come with, as if you know sacred text as at all, then you'll understand when I say you should come with the patience of Job. We are methodical in our approach. We meet every other Tuesday. We've been doing so quite diligently. We invite you to come, but this work is best served for those who have patience, who also are ideologically aligned with the concept of being independent from the university. This is a great place for you to be if you have questions and want to see a better, more ideologically sound and more inclusive Howard University, from governance and operation and the culture and the spirit. This is a good place for you to be. I want to shout out all of the members who are here. Some people are on more than one committee, but all of you who are on Alumni Independence, I don't have enough time to call you by name, but I want to thank you for working on the membership work. This committee oversaw a membership survey. Hundreds of people responded to that. I want to thank those who are working on developing policy and board structure so that when we are official and nonprofit, we fall into place. You know who you are. I want to thank you for those who come and listen and challenge and question. You know who you are, and we thank you. So I'm going to ask again, if people would go to howardalumniunited.org, you will see the breakdown of the subcommittees. You will see the breakdown of the parent committees. You will have an opportunity to join because we are a working body. So we invite you to go to that to that website. And what I'm going to ask one of our diehards, Miss Marsha Edwards, I asked her to give a little bit of context, historical context about why we do what we do at AI, the lineage that we come from, the lineage of the activists, what the history of standing up to the university and doing what we believe is right. Miss Marsha Edwards is going to give us that historical context, and she's going to remind us of why perseverance is important and why we believe that we can have the university that we envision, which is at its core a Black university that is inclusive. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Marsha Edwards. And Miss Marsha Edwards, when you're done, turn it back over to me for a quick second, and then I'll close out. So thank you so much.
And thank you, April, for everything that you do. What's best for Black people is a question that's kind of baked into the dough of our political and cultural dialogue, both in the larger community and in the Howard community specifically. Do we work to chart our own course based on what we believe as people is best for us? Or do we strive toward assimilation into the larger population? This question has been at the very crux of much of the dissent, the turmoil, the back and forth throughout the history of our university. Howard students have been at the center of this almost since Howard's inception, and they've always had an involvement that went from global to local, to national to local. One of the earliest incidents that I found was in the early 1900s when Howard women marched with the first suffragists down Pennsylvania Avenue. In the 40s, a Howard female law attorney was busy in DC leading demonstrations against segregation downtown. We know that in the 50s and 60s, Howard students were at the forefront of the civil rights movement, not just in DC, but nationally. Two Howard students, Ms. Ruth Howard, as well as Stokely Carmichael, who you later knew as Kwame Ture, were instrumental in not just SNCC, but the national movement for Black rights in this country and the international movement as well. The 70s found Howard students first in the forefront dealing with the anti-war movement. The 80s and 90s found them in the middle of the Free South Africa movement. In fact, many of them came to be known as unpaid staff at the Trans-Africa headquarters here. And we're of course aware of what has gone on just a couple of years back at the height of the pandemic, before there was a vaccination. Howard students were front and center during the Black Lives Matter movement. The activism at Howard has not been relegated only to international things. Howard students have been just as involved, and maybe more so, in matters that intimately affected them on the campus. And from early on, we know about the student activism in the late 60s, where students began to fight for a more African-centered curriculum, which did not mean that we did not want a curriculum that reflected the larger world, but that Howard should speak to the needs and the development of people who came there. The '89 appointment of Lee Atwater to the Board of Trustees, who was known for his race-baiting political acts, brought Howard students out in force once again. And not only were they threatened with the loss of finance or expulsion, this time around they were also threatened that their physical safety was threatened. They have not held back. 2018, after the embezzlement scandal, Howard students came to the fore again and demonstrated, asking that there be more transparency. All of this that was happening at the time the tuition was rising, the physical plant was deteriorating, and there was less and less autonomy. And we're all very much familiar with what happened in 2021, when once again, the students put everything they had on the line. And one thing I have to mention is the fact that trustees and the media both spoke about how well organized, how well thought out the students' arguments were, how structured their requests were, and how legitimate they were. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind, because these are not people who are acting irrationally. By the same token, Howard's administration has been resistant to change, partly for its own survival. We know change is not easy, and perhaps they're invested in making sure there is a Howard, whether it best speaks to what people currently see is in the best interest of the students. They have unfortunately traditionally tried to put down dissent. Howard students, in addition to being threatened, as I mentioned earlier, with expulsion or having the tuition cut off, their financial aid cut off, have had their physical bodies put at risk. One benefit that I can talk about is that here in 2022, we can see the arc of history. We know that we're not seeing blips on a radar screen. We are seeing, at best, improvisations on a theme that's continued almost from the school's inception. Because we have the benefit of this long range view, we can start addressing these issues holistically, systematically, as opposed to looking at them and dealing with them one issue at a time and from a reactionary manner. So I'm trusting that we'll take what we have, we can learn from our past and move it forward. It's truly a time to look at Sankofa. Go back and fetch the good and use it to push us to the future. Thank you so much, April.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank you is all I can say for putting it in context. And I just want people to understand the importance of connecting the dots and knowing that there's no unbroken line here. We did a program last year that talked about 55 years of student activism. And that 55 years of student activism at Howard University, where there's a mindset of holding the university accountable for being its best to all of the stakeholders, is what we embody in this organization, HAU, and within the Alumni Independence Committee. So we encourage you, if you're about holding the university accountable, if activism was in your blood as a student, or maybe it wasn't and it is now, we welcome you to, and I'll correct my language, not join HAU, but to support it. Support it with your labor, with your talent, with your volunteering. You need not have hours available every single week. Maybe you can only commit to once a month or periodically. But let me just highlight that at its core, activism is about engagement. So I want people to remember that there are simple things that you can do and take away from this meeting that will help support Howard Alumni United and all of its committees. You could, because we are about restoring shared governance on the trustee level and building and envisioning and building an independent organization, one of the things that you can do, and you might not put a lot of weight on it, but to us it's important, is sign the petition. There's a petition on the website, Howard Alumni United, where we've called for people to say, I agree with the principle of shared governance. And we think that the trustee positions that were eliminated permanently should be restored. Your 3 minutes to fill out that petition, or telling a friend if you already filled it out, or telling 5 friends, carries more weight than you probably imagine. So just know, if you hear nothing else about, well, what can I do? Signing the petition that's on the front page of Howard Alumni United .org is a great, tangible, material way to support the work of this organization. You can also join a committee. You need not be perfect. You need not have all of the hours that you might want to give. We will take what you give as long as you come with patience and perseverance and a certain ideology of supporting this independent work. We come from a lineage of strong activists of holding the university accountable, which Ms. Marcia just explained. You can join a committee, one of the 3 top committees or a subcommittee. All of that information is on the website. So I'll leave you with that. We can talk more offline, but I forgot to say I bring you greetings as a former HUSA president. I bring you greetings as a graduate from the class of 1991. I bring you greetings as the former executive minister of Black Neoforce, and as one of the co-leaders of the 1989 student takeover, and as just a human being who gives a damn about Black people, and very proud to be a Howard grad. So I thank you to everyone, and my fellow steering committee members, I thank you. And again, check out, please, and tell a friend or 5 or 20 about howardalumniunited.org. Thank you. And Cheryl, with that, I'm done for now.
Thank you, April, and thank you, Marcia. April, there's not much more that I can say than that. You've really pretty much done the closing remarks for us. Really appreciate it. And Angela, if you could display that last slide that we had intended for the Q&A. I do want to echo what you, Sharon, I think Donald mentioned in the beginning. We would not be where we are and would not have made the progress we've made were it not for the volunteers. And so to all of you who have contributed in some form or fashion, whether it was volunteering on a subcommittee, whether it was doing research, whether it was helping us to put together our initial video, whether it's the Capstone Group and other organizations that helped us along the way, you are really appreciated. And we say thank you from the bottom of our heart from whatever you did. And for those of you who have hung in on this call, we appreciate it as well. The goal was to get this done at a reasonable time for our East Coast people, and it is 10 o'clock. I think I was told that there have not been any questions. Again, I cannot see if there are questions that we need.
Randall,
I have a
did you
comment.
raise your hand?
I have a comment. I'd like
Okay.
to speak.
Okay, I can't see who that is, so
Eddie Johnson, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I have a comment. Getting back to economics of Howard. Number one, I'm going to volunteer to participate on the committee. I'll join tomorrow. I'm a graduate both in architecture and in urban planning. And what I'm concerned about is that none of the economics that have been discussed address the fact that there's only one major source of economic development on the planet, and that's land development. We're seeing all these major buildings go up all over the city, and very little of that money is invested in Black development. Howard University, and not only does it generate great income for building buildings, but there's no source of jobs and contracts in a major land development project. It buys everything when they're being planned, when they're being designed, and when they're being built and occupied. And so that's an issue. Howard doesn't spend much money with its own alumni. Too many outside forces other than us are benefiting from the millions of dollars that Howard University invests in real estate. And so I will participate. Matter of fact, I'll pull up this when we go off. And that's something I want to discuss. I wrote an article on this 12 years ago. There are billions of dollars invested in real estate here. And people of color have very little interest in them other than getting minor jobs and minor contracts. And there's where all the money is spent, not only here, but all over the planet. All over the planet. That's where all the money is spent. And we're not paying attention. And I heard no one talk about that today. And that's something we need to address. Every time a building's built, it's not just all the money that's spent when it's being planned. The lawyers, the architects, the marketing people, the media people, and so forth and so on. And so definitely I want to participate. And those of you who know me know I'm very outspoken. There's a $100 million project being planned in my community near the Rhode Island Avenue Metro stop right now. I was on a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago, and my ANC rep said, please, you're the only person here that's not afraid to speak out. So I asked this white developer, what is the value of this project? He didn't give me, he said, well, 375 units plus high-end units plus. He couldn't say it. And I said, this is over $100 million. He said, well, not quite, which was a lie. He knew damn well I was right. I asked, how much money is invested in the African-American businesses in this neighborhood? He said, well, I'm going to go talk to the mayor. The small business program for Blacks is a failure. And it's a failure because not enough of us are collectively holding these folks accountable for how our tax money is spent. And so, yes, I will participate. And this is incredible. It's going on everywhere. Our taxes are being exploited by these huge developers, and they spend no money with us. And by the way, I got in an Uber a year ago, and I asked this guy, besides being this is very important. I asked this fellow, I said, beyond driving for Uber, what else do you do? He said, I'm a DC auditor. So I said, okay, if I make an assessment about DC contracting, will you tell me the truth? He said, yes. I said, I'm serious. He said, yes. I said, all our contract money, by the way, a couple $1 billion, number one, whites, number two, Lebanese, Iranians, East Indians, Asians, Hispanics, and we're last. That's why we're having so many problems in this city. We're not holding these politicians accountable of what they're doing with our tax money. And it's time for more people like me to speak out, to go to these meetings and sit down and don't say nothing and allow this to happen. Millions of our tax money are being invested. And I just gave you one that's being planned right now. We're getting nothing. But our tax money, millions of our tax money is being reinforcing these things. So yes, I will participate, probably in another committee as well. But this is ridiculous what's going on. I hear nobody talking about Howard University's investment in economic development. Huge project is being planned right in my neighborhood at Taylor Street and 14th. How many of you all know about this? I don't know how many millions of dollars it is, but it's a lot. Yes, I'm done.
So, Mr. Johnson, do you know, I don't know if someone has put it in the chat, but do you know Was there, did you see the link in order to complete to be a volunteer? Because we could definitely use your voice and knowledge.
I thought I heard April say, oh, wait a minute, I wrote
We
something
just
down.
want to make sure that.
Howard University Alumni United. Howard
Can
University.
someone post the job form link in the chat before we close so that anyone who wants to volunteer can complete that? I think we want to make sure we don't lose.
Thought I wrote it down. Howard.
It's in
Alumni.
there, but we'll repost. It's there now. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Howard Alumni United. Howard
Committees.
University
Thank you,
United.com.
Corinne. Thank you. Thank you so
Cheryl,
much.
looks like Brandon has his hand up. I don't know if you
We're not going to be able to get to all of the questions, Tracy. I have 4 questions that have come in via cell and another 4 that have come either via direct chat. So Brandon, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get to you. And again, we're trying to be respectful of everyone's time on the East Coast.
And especially people who haven't asked the question as well.
I'm sorry?
Especially those who haven't asked the question.
Right, exactly. I did hear back that Renee said she wasn't able to stay through until the end. So, but that she'd be open to answer any questions that came through for her that she wasn't able to address. So I'm not sure. We will need to talk about what the format is that we're going to get back, whether they'll be posted on the website. Someone had a really good idea or suggestion in the chat way on. We'll have to go back and look at the chat recording to respond via an email. I forgot the format. So I guess we'll have to look into that as well as posting them on the website. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the upcoming meetings. Again, the 29th is going to be a very important date. Is there anyone on the steering committee that has anything to add that I'm perhaps forgetting?
Cheryl, I'm putting in if I'm reposting perhaps how people can join the mailing list.
Okay.
So that if you check the chat right now, this is the form for how you can join the email list. If you're not on social media, join the email list, even if you are. So just check that out, because that's one way that we keep in contact with thousands of people.
Thank you.
And sure, can we just acknowledge the Capstone Group just briefly that we work with in their event that's coming up on the 17th?
I'm not aware of their event, Donald.
Yeah,
The Capstone Group has dropped in the chat that their 5th anniversary celebration is on, what is the date?
17th.
The 17th, September 17th. They have dropped the form in the chat for you to register. So please support the Capstone Group and their 5th anniversary, which is coming up on September 17th.